Hey, Yadin, Tom Judd here, IFMBE CED Board Chair and a member of the Founders Council of the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance. And hey, it seems like we were just talking yesterday. But you, brother, you've led our field for so long, and we are so proud of you. Tell us, a little bit about the Alliance today with some questions. But start with, so recap this incredible career.
I'm telling you, Tom, it seemed like every day you and I share some kind of a project or a task relating to the international healthcare delivery and the technology. So doing it today one more time is a pleasure. Hopefully it will be of interest to the audience, but I certainly do have important message to share. I will start, as you suggested, with my own history. I was born and raised in Israel, and after fulfilling my military obligation to the country, I offered an interesting opportunity to go and study, as it was called then, in America, and decided that this is a unique opportunity, and I will come here for a couple years and study in one of the American, quote, United States of America universities, and then we'll go back home and continue with my life as it used to be. However, it did not end up like that. After starting at the university in New York, I realized that the overwhelming of so much concrete, such a high building, all kind of high rises and traffic jam and so on is not exactly the environment I was imagining to raise a 2 years old that I was having at the time, and decided to look at something that is green around New York City, and found West Virginia and applied to the university there and moved all my credit and ended up graduating in undergraduate, master level, and graduate degrees from West Virginia University. It was an interesting part of my life because it was really learning how big a planet we have, how much people are different in different parts of the world, but yet we're all sharing desire for high quality, immediate, and expertise healthcare services. That was common to every place I went to. As usually happen in American university, there is an employment day, a fair day where industry would come in and offer opportunity to recruit graduate students, and so was the case at my university. And I was offered to come and work on an interesting project at the time. And that was developing a vehicle that would go to space, come back, and be reusable for space exploration. I told my wife, Becky, listen, those crazy American things that they're going to send something to space, it will come back and be reused, not going to happen in my lifetime. But if I will work on something like that, I will be in the forefront of technological development, and I will understand so much more about engineering that when we go back to Israel, I will be a very hot ticket. I will get great job and great career. And so we decided I'm going to take this opportunity and began to work on the space shuttle as one of the Defense Department contractor. And my responsibility was to develop the return to Earth navigation system. Of course, I was mistaken at the time. And as you know, the space shuttle was very successful and blowing through technological innovation and national and international aspiration and collaboration. And from that, I learned that if you can put people together along a single mission that they care and share about, the outcome is going to be very positive and probably also successful. I, along the way, realized that I'm branching away from healthcare. And West Virginia University called me up while I was working on the space shuttle and says, you know, we have an opportunity for you to start biomedical engineering program at the hospital that you always wanted to do. Why didn't you come back and start that? And of course, I jumped on the opportunity, came back and started the biomedical engineering program at the West Virginia University Medical Center, and became also an associate researcher that supported the technology and the engineering for all the animal trial and investigation that was taking place at the time. Again, in my mind, I thought I'm going to do that for a couple of years and then go back to Israel and do the same there in one of the medical centers in Israel. Never happened. I stayed in the country because I could see the opportunity, and I was rewarded with very satisfying jobs to try different things at different level, one after the other. And the point where I realized that I'm staying in the United States for the rest of my life was when I got a call from the Texas Medical Center, the largest medical center in the world. And they told me, look, we have two very famous heart surgeons here, Dr. Michael DeBakey and Dr. Denton Cooley. Those were walking gods on the planet of Earth as far as cardiac surgery at the time. And if you want to develop the engineering associated with the artificial heart programs, you better come to Houston, Texas, and start to enlarge the scope of the existing program to include research and engineering publication. Why don't you come down for an interview? For which I told my wife, look, I'm going to go down to the interview. I will never get such a fantastic job. But at the same time, if I won't go for the interview, I will never see a biomedical engineering lab at the largest medical center in the world at the time that everybody was talking about. So I'm going to go down with realization, this job is not mine, but I'm going to learn from that. Again, curiosity, learning, focusing on what can I do to improve my contribution was the message. The rest is history. I got the job. I came down to work 25 years in the Texas Medical Center, very successful program, very successful career. And the last 12 years, I'm serving as an independent consultant in biomedical, in healthcare technology management services, where I advise hospital industry and international organization on how to use technology more efficient, safer, and better. So this is, in short summary, is the idea of where me as individual fit into the scope of this Global Clinical Engineering Alliance in a way of understanding the multiplicity of character of individual, but the sharing common of the purpose that we all want to see a better healthcare services, more efficient system, safer and more predictable outcome of patient care.
You know, Yadin, I'd always heard about this guy down in Houston, and I walked into this meeting at Amy meeting there in '88 and met you among many other people as you were bringing us the clinical engineering folks in the United States together for the first time, because we wanted to do something special in clinical engineering, separate from others, and to get further recognition. So tell us a little bit more about your view of what clinical engineering is and its main goals.
Absolutely. Evolving field, relatively newcomers to the engineering discipline, but yet as important as any of the others. Clinical engineering is definitely at the point of the cross between the basic engineering principle and the life sciences. This cross is at the point of care where patient care services are being provided and dependent on technology. And clinical engineering, therefore, is the profession that look at the life cycle of the technology from innovation to disposition and retirement of the technology, all the way to the clinical trial, the prototyping, the regulatory compliance, the commissioning, the adoption, the use, the upgrades, the integration, and then the replacement with the next generation. To be able to do all that effectively, efficiently, safely, and with the predictable outcome, you need to have competent individuals that are called clinical engineers who are practicing a profession called clinical engineering.
Very good. So, you've really gained, I know you've been to a large number of countries over the years as a consultant with WHO and in other roles. You've got really a global perspective. So what is your view of clinical engineering's main activities?
So there are main activities that divided in my mind into two categories. One is the conventional, and the second one is the forthcoming. The conventional is the part of the duties that are well familiar by now. This is the technology assessment. This consists of commissioning of the site as well as the devices and the product. This is the user training and the setup of the maintenance and repair, or otherwise known as performance assurance program of the technology. And it's involved a life cycle. Unfortunately, part of that life cycle is also the risk management. And otherwise, I recall using the terms of forensic engineering to that, where you try to predict, mitigate risk, reduce it as much as possible, communicate the residue to the user, and apply design and controls to make sure that the product is being used safe for the rest of its life. The forthcoming, therefore, is the ability to identify systematically, not individual product, but systematically how, for example, a clinic operates, how, for example, hospital operates, and what is the role of the technology in that total operation, not a single device. And how can we develop benchmark, guidelines, standards, regulatory system that would be able to accommodate the system to be integrated and function safe and effectively into the patient care services. You know, the provisioning of healthcare services and patient outcomes are dependent so much on the competence and the skill of the healthcare team. But, and here is the forthcoming part of my response to you, but it also depends to a large degree on the technology that is being used and dependent on to deliver those services by the healthcare team. This dependence on technology is at all-time high, and the vision and the projection is that it will continue to increase. If we leave this technology independency to non-clinical engineers to deal and manage and direct, I don't know if the outcome will be as good as when we give it to the competent clinical engineers to manage and guide this into the future. We must therefore see that our duties are not just the conventional one I referred to. I referred to in the first part of my response to you, Tom, but also that we are setting up the educational program and the preparation for the forthcoming duty that I'm just referring to, for the understanding that this dependence on the technology is a two-edged sword. It can hurt and it can benefit. Our role is to make sure that it will only benefit healthcare system and patient outcome. It will not harm. And for that, you need to have competent people to facilitate those services and to make sure that provisioning of healthcare services are at patient ready all the time. This is the forthcoming. And for that, I believe that we have to improve academic training. I believe we have to improve professional recognition and professional credentialing of clinical engineers. And I believe that when you mentioned 1988, I remember that we talked at the time about what can we do in this country to go further towards meeting this forthcoming duty. And we decided to organize the American College of Clinical Engineering for the purpose of bringing up the education, bringing up the credentialing and the certification of clinical engineering, make the profession worthy of recognition, and make it clear that you have an educated, trained, and qualified community that deserve recognition yet to become.
So the final question is, why the alliance, and what's your vision for how it will affect international healthcare? Hey, and I'm going to put one answer in your mouth, and that is because you love your family and you're somebody who helps and loves families around the world. I'm particularly thinking, though, of that beautiful granddaughter, Becky, over your shoulder. But tell us about your vision for international healthcare.
Yeah, thank you for that. She is wearing my Air Force cap there in the background. But you did put the correct answer. You know, I will borrow from President Kennedy a famous adage that he used. Ask not what you can do, what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country. And I will change it a bit. Ask not what GCEA can do for you, but rather, I think that we all need to ask, what can we do for patient care all around the world? That's why we want to see the Global Clinical Engineering Alliance become a reality, grow, and serve as a platform for collaboration, for creating cooperations and alliances within the clinical engineering profession and between clinical engineering professions and other healthcare stakeholders, the clinicians, the nurses, the hospital administrator, the regulator, the Ministry of Health, all together seeking how can we better serve patient care as a team. And in the area of technology management, of life cycle of engineering application to improve technology in healthcare and healthcare outcome, we still need very much this alliance and this platform to be able to better collaborate, to be able to create things that we don't have today, share academic program, interact with society between different regions, and make sure that we meet the needs of healthcare into the future. If you look today around the world and you ask the question, who is clinical engineers, you get variety of level of preparation, education, training, and competency. We need to be in a point where we clearly understand what are the educational requirements, how do we provide them, what are the professional competency and therefore their certification and credentialing, and how can we encourage that. The Global Clinical Engineering Alliance is going to be increasing clinical engineering careers, job satisfaction, and realization that we are actually important part of the healthcare team, that without us, healthcare is not going to be as optimal as it should be. You know, Tom, we all realize, especially during this COVID-19 era, that healthcare is not as simple provision of services as we hoped it to be. We have a lot of challenges. Therefore, the clinical engineering should seek to continue to provide solutions to problems that healthcare services and programs are continuously faced with. This is an important aspect, and I would like to make sure that as we look into the future, that we in the clinical engineering profession, and specifically in the Clinical Engineering Global Alliance, will continue to bring solutions to problems that are challenging healthcare provision of services.
Well, Yadin, I sure have been inspired for 33 years by what you've been doing, brother, with teams and with many others. And I'm looking forward to the next 25 hanging out with you. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.